Hi, welcome to the third part of the EM Agriton podcast. We're talking about soil analysis and the reports. So far, we've spoken about how you get your soil sample. Then we spoke about what you need to look for in your soil report. And now we're going to look at how you actually interpret it. So we've got Jan Viersma Hoekstra here. He's our technical director. He's been doing this for longer than I dare imagine, and he's fully expert in it. So we're going to hand over to Jan, and he's going to give us a few tips on how to interpret that bit of paper that, as he said, gets normally put in the ring binder and put on the shelf. So Jan, if you'd like to give us a first way in to get our money's worth, please.
Yes, I think soil sample is worth a lot more money than you have to pay onto the lab if you use it well. And using it is only possible when you can read it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, if I gave you the best book I ever read in German, and I don't give you a German dictionary with it, it can be a nice book, but it's useless to you here. And that is with soil analysis the same. And if you don't have, even as the language on the soil sample in English, but you don't have a dictionary for how to read the figures, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
In general, when I look to soil samples, and I told you in the former podcast, you have different type of soil samples, and I prefer the ones what tells you what's in the fridge, what are you preparing when you're cooking, and what's on your plate. Those three are very important, because then you can see a little bit, you can expect, you can have an idea where your outcome will be with a crop. When I say this, then I remember immediately about discussions I had years and years and years ago. I worked in the south of the Netherlands in an area where the peat soils, the sand soils, and the clay soils are very close to each other. And I came to one of the farmers, and his two brothers were there. And one was from peat, one on clay, and one on sand. And we had a discussion about soil. And we had all our opinions of soil, and I was listening. And they went after an hour, and they were all three sure that they had a good conversation about soil.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, when they left, I spoke to them later on again. They didn't have a clue what they're talking about, because they were all three talking about something totally different. It was all three soil.
Yeah.
But it was something totally different. So that is with soil samples. Even if soil samples are very close chemically wise, that doesn't mean they are physically or biologically the same. They can be totally different.
Okay.
That is what you have to consider. Even if you have two soils which are almost identical, and one is very close to a river, and the other soil is quite high, yeah, they will behave during the season totally different.
Yeah.
A soil what is in the lowlands will be a lot longer cold than a soil what is higher up. Because in the lowlands you have more water, and it costs a lot of sunlight before all that water is heated up. Where you have a well-drained field, it takes a lot less time to heat up the soil.
Yeah.
And that has immediately effect on the activity of microbes in the soil.
Yeah.
And a rough guideline is below the 10 degrees of the soil temperature, microbes are not very active.
Right. Okay.
From 10 to 20, they go mad up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you do exactly the same on a lowland farm, or on a, say, land what is well aerated and drained, well drained, and a lot higher, the growth start and also the yield and everything can be totally different.
Yeah.
There's also a positive thing on the lowland is when I have a dry period, most of the time, there's a lot longer water there, so they continue to grow. That information you can find also on your soil sample. So you can find that if you look to how your clay, silt, and sand area is.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have a lot of clay, your soil will be later than when you have a lot of sand.
So you get later movement of the
You
plants.
get the temperature of clay to warm up for the sun takes more energy than air in the sand. The amount of air in a sandy soil is a lot more than in a clayey soil because the clay particles are a lot closer to each other than
Yeah.
the sandy soils. Yeah. And peat is actually no soil.
Yeah.
If you look to it, it's totally different again. So if you look to a soil sample, that is one of the first things I always look. How is clay, silt, and sand? If the farmer knows his farm very well, he doesn't have to look there because he knows it from himself.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, farms becoming very big, and the interest in those differences is not that big anymore. But don't get me wrong, there are still a lot of farmers who know their fields very well. As an agronomist, they sent me a lot of soil samples, and they asked me what my ideas is, and I don't know where it is exactly. So for me, that is very important. First thing is where you look at is what crop does he wants to grow and when does he want to start.
Okay. So that's
If I have a very early crop, then I need to start. He needs one element is most important, and that is phosphate.
oh,
Because phosphate is one of the most important elements in the spring, because that makes that plants can germinate. So seeds can germinate. Yeah, stolon can be root system can be formed in with potatoes, and for that there have to be something done. That means actually the starch in the seed potato or the starch in the grain has to be transformed into energy again.
yeah.
Yeah, otherwise it can't grow. As there is no photosynthesis possible because the seeds are in the soil and the potato is in the soil, it needs its energy for somewhere else.
Yeah.
So what it does, it's decomposing its starch to energy again. And there is one element extremely important for that, that is phosphate, because phosphate makes a product, an enzyme, what is called ADP and ATP. I don't go too much in that because then you come very technical, it's not necessary. As long as you know that that phosphate is important to start the engine.
Yeah.
See it like that. That is, yeah. If a diesel is starting in winter, doesn't start, we always sprayed a little bit of that. I can't remember the name anymore. We put that, and then it was starting immediately. Well, that is the phosphate. So if you have huge phosphate in your soil,
Yeah.
and you have no easily available phosphate,
Yeah.
there is one message here: use a good starter phosphate.
Right.
Very simple. It is not rocket science. If you have a lot of starter phosphate and you are very high in soil phosphate,
Yeah.
really take the guts and halve your phosphate or do only 20% of your phosphate, because when the root system is once growing well, it will take plenty of phosphate out of the soil because the root system is excreting acids, and this phosphate will come in solution.
Okay.
Unfortunately, a lot of farmers and advisors are afraid for shortage, and it gives a good feeling, doesn't it? If you give enough, I give them plenty. Yeah, and we do that with human beings as well, and they become big and fat. Yeah, and then we don't call them healthy anymore. So the hamburgers culture in agriculture doesn't work either. They should have enough,
Yeah.
but they should work themselves through the nutrients.
Yes.
On the other hand, I have soils where there is enough starter, but not enough in the season.
Yeah.
Then you use another type of phosphate. So play with those data. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you look through the potash supply, for example, most people use potash today as murate. Yeah. Murate is potash chloride.
Yeah.
When do we normally, Carla, when do we normally apply that stuff? On potatoes, for example.
Oh, in the seedbed. Yeah, most of it goes in right at the start, right
And
plant.
if you look to when the plants need it, actually, it's the most essential element for tuber filling.
Yeah.
So we need it after the blooming.
Yeah.
And I read on my analyzers here, I have a moderate potash. Yeah. I have
Yeah.
a moderate, my CAC is 100% filled. And I have a CAC of 40. What will happen with your potash chloride, Carl? What do you think?
Well, it won't be there in the soil for the tubers.
No, because a little bit of rain, it's highly soluble and it washes all away. And those things, you can learn from that. And that is not rocket science. It's just combine all the data what is on that good soil analysis.
Yeah.
And the book is reading himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is actually so simple.
Yeah.
If you look at it and you look what has happened there, say, okay, yeah, I can see what's going on. So I do that difference. The same actually with nitrogen. Yeah. If you use, what does nitrogen generally do? Nitrogen lets grow a lot of green leaves. Yeah. And as long as it is vegetative, it won't go easily generative.
Yeah.
In other words, vegetative is growing leaves, and vegetative from veg, and generative is making seeds.
Yeah.
So if you use a lot of nitrogen, you will retard your harvest.
Yeah. So one of the things, speaking to like growers and agronomists, one of the things that's always welcome is that flush of growth after the nitrogen in the spring.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a reassurance. So
yeah. I'm betting that 95% of all those farmers who like to see that are using still ammonium nitrate. It is a nitrate effect.
so it's not necessarily a nitrogen effect; it's a nitrate.
It's mainly a nitrate effect. If you do the same with urea,
Yeah,
or with ammonium sulfate, you will see a total different effect.
okay.
But it is a nitrate effect. Nitrate is NO3.
Yeah,
and that means actually it is nitrogen what is oxidized.
yes, yeah,
And everything, in other words, burned.
Yeah,
and that has no energy anymore. And for the plant, nitrate is poison. But nature has a very nice solution for this problem.
Okay.
Because the best solution for pollution is dilution.
Okay. Yeah.
And the plant is soaking up a lot of water.
Oh, is that what is?
So that is where your plant grows from.
Yeah.
And you can easily see if you use nitrate, ammonium nitrate, or you use ammonium sulfate, or you use urea, ammonium nitrate plants have always the lowest organic matter content.
In the soil?
No, in the plant.
Oh, right. Okay.
The dry matter content I said organic matter, I mean dry matter. The dry matter content grown with urea plant is always the highest, and the dry matter content with ammonium nitrate is always the lowest.
Okay, that sounds like why are people doing it then?
When we started with ammonium nitrate and we saw that enormous fleshy growth, that was growth, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And when you are a dairy farmer and you have soils what are 30 grass to cut what are 30 centimeters high, or you have another what is 25, the 30 meters high always falls over and is dark green.
Yeah.
And the other one is still standing stiff.
Yeah.
And has a lighter color. The eye is misleading you.
Okay. So I don't want to get down this alleyway. So bring that back to the nitrogen reading in your soil analysis then. So
but you look, you have three things there. You have a stock of nitrogen in the soil, you have a CN ratio, and you have an end supply capacity.
Okay.
The end supply capacity, that is the amount of nitrogen what will be released during the season. But the temperature has to become above the 10 degrees, otherwise the microbes don't release it.
Right.
If that is high, you have to be very careful with later supply of nitrogen from the bag.
Right.
Because then you will have in June, July, an explosion of nitrogen.
Yeah.
And that will give an enormous vigorous crop. And if you have wheat, done that bit wheat, you have not to use 3 times a CCC or modus, but you have maybe use it 5 times.
5?
I'm just exaggerating now. I'm exaggerating now, but it is that it makes it, the nitrogen makes the crop longer, but also the cells are weaker because there is more water in it.
Does that mean that they're vulnerable to disease and pest, or?
Also that there was I think he's originally from Ireland or from England, Professor Dr. Callahan. He wrote beautiful books about this phenomenon, and he discovered that aphids can find crops easily which are high in nitrate.
Okay.
And why is that? Because a crop high in nitrate have a high cell tension with water, because the plant has attract more water to dilute the nitrate. But in that moisture is also the cell moisture is the food for the aphids, is sugars.
Yeah.
And with their siphon, what is actually a needle,
Yeah.
yeah, if the more tension there is in the cell, the more easy that needle goes in. It's
Oh,
like
from the aphid.
yeah, and then the liquid just spreads into the animal, so it doesn't have even to suck. It's the same if you have a half full balloon and you want to punch a hole in it with your finger, it doesn't work. But if you have a full tension balloon and you put with your finger in, bang.
Yeah, and you're soaking wet. Yeah. Okay, so that's a good thing to look for in the nitrogen then. It's for looking.
Yeah, and the same with the phosphate. From what is supply, do I need it now or do I need it later? And on that you make your decision. What you make your choice for your fertilizer. And if you do that wrong, then it can very easily be that the cheapest fertilizer will be on the end the most expensive.
Yeah, I see.
Because it didn't work. And for example, if you have murate with chlorine or you use the sulfate for potash, can have an effect not only on the crop today,
Yeah,
but that can have easily an effect on the crop over 3 years' time.
because because it's poisoning the soil.
With potash chloride, I do it in my lab and put microbial live in potash chloride, you kill them immediately.
Right.
You do it in potash sulfate and they stay alive.
Yeah.
So, and you don't think about it, I know that, but that's nice to have a lab, you know, we do those little silly tests and they say, my God, that is not what we expected.
Yeah. And so you keep going back to microbes. So you're
Yeah.
saying for the nitrogen, it's the microbes. For the phosphate, it's the microbes. It's their activity.
Yeah, the more active the microbial life is, the more they can, because phosphate itself is not very soluble.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if phosphate comes, especially when you have calcium phosphates, when they come in an area where are acids produced, what microbes do, then they come in solution.
Okay.
So when you have, and we measure those different type of phosphate as available phosphate, yeah, and as available as stock.
Yeah.
In this case, be aware how they measure as well. If it is, for example, P or P2O5 on your analyzers.
Of course. Yeah.
2 times 3, 2 P multiplied by 2.3 is P2O5.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you have to do that with K2O as well. So be careful what you read.
Yes. Yeah.
So that is another little hint to use your soil analyzer. But it's not rocket science. You know, I learned it as well, so it has to be simple.
I'm not saying anything, Jan. That's so we've said about microbes now and making things available, and a lot more soil reports are including something about microbial activity. What are we looking for, and how can we use it in a report?
I think this research is just starting, and I think the samples coming from Japan and from France now, and there is a new one from Australia. And they do they do DNA tests, they do RNA tests, they do CO2 tests, they do ammonia tests, all kind of things. And to be very honest, I think there is nobody on the moment can really say to a farmer, okay, with my analyzer, I can show you that field will perform better than that field, and with this analyzer, that field will produce a lot more than that field. We don't know. It is the first steps. It is not negative. I'm not negative because it is a kind of research we have to learn.
Yeah.
And the early adapters you have in all systems. And you have early adapters here as well. And sometimes you have in new development, the early adapters, they did it right.
Yeah.
And they are always in the books.
Yeah.
But the book of the early adapters who didn't make anything, that book is a lot bigger and nobody read it because it has too many pages.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the research on itself, fair. And I think this should be, but then you come to a total different topic. It is now done by commercial companies.
Yeah.
And I appreciate they're doing it and I respect them that they're doing it. But if you really look at it, this should be something what be supported by government and government paid universities, because we pay all for a big part of the universities. And if the people who know on the universities is not only our future, but also the future of planet Earth.
Yeah.
And if we do things totally wrong agriculture-wise, we harm planet Earth. And that is not a hippie talk. No, that is reality. If you look around, I saw erosion in Brazil. The erosion gutter, the how do you call them? Those what erosion makes.
Oh,
All
like
this,
a rut or a gully.
that hole, what happens? How do you call that?
A rut or
Yeah, I'm looking for another word, but it was that deep. When I stood in it, yeah, there could stand somebody on my shoulder, and he couldn't even see above
wow.
on the field where it came from. So that was around 4 meters deep.
Wow. And that's
Goyle, you call it a goyle, isn't it?
oh, what, sorry?
A goyle.
Goyle?
Yeah, oh, that's not an English word. I'm sorry.
No, that's for Dutch viewers, that one.
Okay, so erosion is enormous, and all that fertile topsoil, because here in England we have a problem as well, what a lot of people don't see. We have a little stream here very close.
Yeah.
Days like this, it is totally brown. The coast of England, when I fly sometimes to the Netherlands and they go over the south coast, over Southampton, yeah, then after rainy days, miles in the sea, the water is not blue, is not green, is brown. We are losing our topsoil.
Yeah.
So coming back to this kind of studies should be number one, soil studies. And if we do things wrong, we should change it.
Yeah. So I'm jumping on this. You said about the soil is in the seas and things, and we're losing it. Is there anything on the soil report you could look for to maintain your soil, sort of like something to do with drainage or?
Well, there are a few things on your soil. What you can see, if we know that the clay, silt, sand, and organic matter comparison, the combination is very important to know if my soil is easily, if I have easily that it washes away. Yeah, so I can see there. Another thing, what you should really consider is soil under a slope. What is naked in winter is always a factor to calculate with, because you will have a lot of erosion easily. Then, so especially on those slopes, the soil should never be naked in winter, especially with the enormous amount of water what we have. Organic matter, and then I don't mean what they call stable organic matter. A lot more important is active organic matter. Active organic matter, there's a lot of life is living on it, and that makes that humus fraction what actually works like a glue.
Yeah.
That keeps the soil together. And yeah, maybe we should really consider to go back to mixed farming.
Okay, so you've got a ready source of organic matter.
You have to make, then you can grow a few years. If you have 3 years of lay and you plow them, yeah, then you can grow for a few years an arable crop, and then you put them in lay again. So that means that is 3 years grass gives an enormous amount of fresh organic matter, and that is also, you have less chance of erosion.
Yeah.
And very light soils on a slope, you should not plow.
So what about,
take care of your soil.
is that an option?
Sorry?
Cover crops. We're going down a bit of an alley.
I think we should think a few things. That the summer crops, we should go to more and more earlier crops, so we have the time in fall to grow a good cover crop. And what would be better than nitrogen fixing crops? But you have to drill them all early. So this more future-looking way of agriculture has to be adapted in schools and also by the farmers today. We have to learn to work with nature, and a lot of agriculture today is not based on working with nature, is actually working to get the biggest yields in our sheds. And the cost we make, I still think we do a good result in kilograms we harvest. Yeah. Economically wise, I think quite often that the costs are very high to have this. And where are you better with a crop with 8,000 kilograms of wheat, with almost no cost, than 10 tons of wheat with 2 herbicides, to 250 to 300 kilograms of nitrogen, 2 herbicide sprayings, 3 fungicide sprayings, at least 1 insecticide spraying, a few foliars to the crop. Yeah, if you look, and every application is work.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. It's not an easy target, but yeah, you have a target.
Yeah.
And if that can, I had once the guy was in my classroom on the secondary agriculture school in the Netherlands, and I came to his father's farm, and we had talking about the farming for the future. And he said, my goal is, I want to leave my farm in a better condition than I have it from my father.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that one.
Yeah. That's what it's all about. I think that's quite a nice place to stop, actually, Jan. I know there's a lot more we could discuss, but people have got meals to eat and things to do, so I don't want to delay them from that. Thanks ever so much, Jan. I think it's been really useful couple of sessions for me, so thank you for that. Agriton and Agrivital are always here. You can always check out, Google us, find us on the web, phone us. There'll be links down there somewhere. Just get in touch. If you've got any questions, you need to know anything, we're here to help. So thank you very much. Goodbye. Thank you, Jan. See you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.